page of the platform, you'll find 4 big menus: Create, My Designs, Explore and Community. You also can enter to these menus from the top bar. The Create menu allows you to access the edCrumble editor and start creating new learning designs. My Designs menu allows you to access and manage all your designs, edit, share, and add collaborators. Explore menu let you to browse the designs created by other members in the community, and find designs to reuse and adapt. Community menu shows you the list of all members of the community. There is another menu on the top bar, the Analytics menu, which gives you information about what's going on in the community, who is contributing more, which designs are more reused, etc. There is an envelope icon on the top bar which allows you to send private messages to other members of the community. You can always come back to the main page by clicking on the edCrumble button. On the right side of the top bar, you'll find a search bar, useful for example, to find specific designs which contain a certain word. The last menu allows you to access to your account settings and log out. To start creating a learning design, we'll go to the Create menu. We'll write a name for our design on the left box of the context area menu. Once we've finished, note that we can discover what the other icons mean by hovering the mouse on top of each icon during a second, and it will appear a short explanation. This works with all the icons of the edCrumble editor. Let's start with the first icon, Design Description. We can click on it to write a short description of our design. Once we've finished, we'll select its topic and its educational level. Note that when we close the pop-up windows in the edCrumble editor, the information is saved automatically. We can access it again by clicking on the corresponding icon, for example, if we need to edit the information introduced before. The next icon allows us to insert the learning objectives of our design. We'll write each objective on the box and then we'll click on the right button. Once we've introduced several learning objectives, we can edit them or even delete them. OK, done. We'll click on the next icon. Here, we can introduce a description about how will be the evaluation of our learning design, if there will be a final exam, its percentage of the final grade, what activities will be graded, etc. Once we've finished, we'll click on the Close button. The next step consists on introducing the number of students for which our design will be. In our example, we'll put 30 students. Finally, it's time to indicate the dates of our design, when it starts and when it ends. By clicking on the icons, a calendar will appear and we can select the dates. Attention! Note that there is still another icon on the context area, the Experience icon, which allows us to introduce our feedback of the design implemented in class. Once we've introduced the dates of our design, a timeline element will appear on the editor. Note that the timeline shows the period between the start and end dates already introduced. If we click on top of the timeline, scroll in with the mouse, and scroll out, the timeline will zoom in and zoom out. We can do also the same by clicking on the icons of Zoom In and Zoom Out in the Timeline menu. Let's create our first activities. The timeline has 2 layers. A layer with an institution icon, in which we'll place the activities to be done in class. And another layer, with a house icon, in which we'll place the activities to be done out of class. Note that, in the timeline menu there are the same 2 icons. These buttons will allow us to create the activities depending on if they are in-class or out-of-class activities. Let's create our first in-class activity by clicking on the institution icon. We'll write a name for the activity and we'll select a start date and time. Note that the system only allows us to select the dates and times appearing on the timeline. And finally, an end date and time. Logically, in this case, we can't neither select an end date and time before the start date and time introduced. Once we've finished, we'll click on the OK button. Realize that a new activity has appeared on the top layer of the timeline, our first in-class activity. Now, we can create an out-of-class activity by clicking on the house icon, following the same process than before. We'll put a name for the out-of-class activity and we'll select the start and end dates and times. Done. Now, we already have 2 activities on the timeline, each one in a different layer. Note that activities have different colors depending on if they are in-class or out-of-class activities. If we zoom in again, we can focus on a concrete activity. We can use the icon in between the zoom icons for fit all items on the timeline again, and see all the activities we've created. It does an automatic zoom out. By clicking on an activity, a new element will appear on the editor, the Activity Edition area. If we zoom in on the timeline, we can check the dates of our activity on it. Moreover, note that in the Edition area, there are 2 calendars which correspond to these dates, and we can edit them from here if we want to change the dates and times of our activity. But also, it's possible editing the dates and times of an activity, by dragging and moving the activity on the timeline, extending it or shrinking it. Once we've adjusted the dates and times, we can also edit the name of the activity. Logically, when we change the name on the addition area, it's change also the name of the activity in the timeline. Below the activity's name, we can select the learning objectives that will be worked on in this activity. Remember that the list of objectives appears because we introduced the objectives before, by clicking on the Learning Objectives button. Now, we're ready for creating our first task by clicking on the right button. Automatically, a new task has been added to our activity. Each activity can be composed by one or more tasks. In our case, we have 60 minutes in total, and we can see, in red color, that we've still have 40 minutes pending to be assigned to tasks. This is because the duration of our first task is 20 minutes. So, we'll create a second task, and we'll change its duration to 40 minutes. Note that now, finally, we don't have more minutes to assign to tasks. Let's editing the tasks. We've already adjusted the durations, so now, we'll edit the type of task depending on the Bloom's taxonomy. In this case, we'll select neutral. Then, we'll choose if the task will be an individual task for the students, a group task, or a whole class task. We'll select the last one as it will be a professor's lecture, to the whole class. Then, we'll select the type of teacher's presence. In our case, the teacher will be present face-to-face, as it's an in-class activity. But the system allows us to select teacher is not present, or teacher is available online. The last icon of the task header allows us to select if the task will be graded, not graded, or if it's a task for the student's auto-evaluation. We'll select not graded. We'll write a short description of our task on the blank box, and then, we'll repeat the process for the second task. In this case, it will be an understanding task. Note that if we hover the mouse on the different options, the system provides us the descriptions of the Bloom's taxonomy levels. Then, we'll indicate that it will be a group task. Note that now, we must indicate the number of the group members. In our example, they will work on pairs. The professor will be present, so this doesn't need to be changed. And finally, it will be a graded task. Last, we'll write a description for this task, elaborate a concept map of the main ideas explained during the lecture, providing the definitions of the main concepts. OK. We've finished the addition of our first activity. Note that we can duplicate the activity, move the new activity on the timeline, and now, we can edit the new activity by just changing those things that will be different. We can open the resources area by clicking on the paperclip button. Resources are divided in several categories. Files, online apps, which include online educational applications as edPuzzle, Padlet, etc. We can access these applications by clicking on the icons, and a new window will be opened with the web page of the corresponding resource. Physical resources as books, electronics, laboratory artifacts, among others. Resources for communication, social resources which include the most known social networks as Facebook, Twitter, among others. And massive open online courses, oops. Remember that it's a prototype, this tab is still under development. You'll be able to add massive open online courses very soon. Now that we know the different types of resources, we can drag and drop a resource to our activity task. We'll select a PowerPoint and we'll drag and drop it to the first task. Note that a new pop-up window appeared, which will allow us to edit the resource. We can write a title for the resource, a description. Then, we can select the host medium type. The type of medium that will host our resource to be delivered to the students. We can select among LMS, local storage, MOOC platform, web, physical artifact, or cloud storage. If we don't know which option to choose, we can select miscellanea. In our example, the PowerPoint will be placed on the LMS of the course, which will be a Moodle site. So, as medium's name, we'll write Moodle. Note that we can select the target of our resource, introducing an URL or uploading a file. In our case, we've finished. So, we'll close the pop-up window. Remember that the information is automatically saved. We can see that a PowerPoint icon has been added to our task. We can click on it if we want to edit the resource. If we drag and drop the resource inside a resources box, it will be created a new resource of the same type, or we can select to do a copy of the same resource. This is very useful for when we plan to use the same resource in different tasks or activities. Also, it's possible to delete a resource by dragging and dropping it to the bin icon. Attention! Note that a new layer has appeared on the timeline. It corresponds to the hosting medium of our resource, the Moodle. And notice that a PowerPoint icon has appeared on this layer below to the activity which we are editing. This allows us to visualize the alignment of the activities with their resources and their hosting requirements. Let's create a second resource for the second task. We'll create a lucid chart resource as the students must create a concept map during the second task. Oops! We haven't found the resource on the Apps tab. In these cases, note that at the end of each category tab, there is another resource which allows us to create a resource of the type we want, when we don't find it on the existing list. So, we'll select Other Apps and we'll put as a name of the resource Lucid Chart. The hosting medium will be the web, and we'll write the URL of the resource on the corresponding text field. Notice that the timeline has a new layer corresponding to the hosting medium web, which contains our new resource. In our design, it's easy to edit the two resources by clicking on them in the Activity Edition area. Imagine that we have 3 activities of 1 hour each. 2 in-class activities, and 1 out-of-class activity. Remember that they have different colors depending on its type. We'll click on the Graphs button on the right side of the editor to open the Analytics area. The analytics are divided in different categories. The first category allows us to see which percentage of time will be devoted in class or out of class. In our example, we can see that 120 minutes, which corresponds to a 66% of the total time, will be in class. Whereas the time for the activities out of class will be 60 minutes, the 33% of the total. Note that the two colors of the graph follow the same color code of the activities type in the timeline. We can change the homework time, for example, adding 1 hour more. And note that the graph will update automatically. Let's let 1 hour homework, as before. The next 4 categories correspond to the same parameters of the task header. The first one is related to the type of tasks according to the Bloom's taxonomy. The second is related to the type of collaboration activity, individual, group, or the whole class. The third category is about the teacher presence, face-to-face, online, or not present. And the fourth is about the assessment, if the task is graded, not graded, or it's an auto-evaluation task. If we click on the tasks category, we'll see that in our example, we have 60 minutes of neutral tasks, 60 minutes of understanding tasks and 60 minutes of applying tasks in global. But if we click on the second button of the graph, it will show us the analytics depending on the type of activities. In this case, we have that out-of-class students will do an applying level, whereas half of the total time of the activities in class will be devoted to understanding level. Regarding the type of students' tasks, we have 60 minutes of individual tasks, 40 minutes of group activities and 80 minutes of tasks to be done by the whole class together. But if we click on the second button of the graph, we'll see that, mainly, students will work individually at home, whereas in class they'll work on groups or they'll do tasks for the whole class, for example, listening the theory presentation by the teacher. Regarding the teacher presence, we observe that during class hours, teacher is present. Whereas during the out-of-class activities, teacher is not present, neither online. About the evaluation, we state that 55% of the tasks will be evaluated. It corresponds to the total time of the out-of-class activities and 33% of the in-class activities. Attention! Note that if we let this area open when we are editing the activities, the graphs will switch automatically, showing the category which we are editing on the activity area. This allows us to take informed decisions while we design, as we can check the analytics during the design process and know in all moment what's happening. Oops! Sorry. The last tab isn't still operative. This is a prototype. Very soon, it will show the time allocated for each learning objective, as well as we'll be able to see each category depending on the learning objectives, by clicking on the third button of each tab, which it's not yet operative either. OK. edCrumble also provides us analytics per activity. Let's see it. In this case, to activate the Design Analytics per activity, we need to click on the Statistics button of the Timeline menu, on the top right corner. Wow! Suddenly, the time between the activities has disappeared and the activities have more colors than before. Note that at the bottom of the timeline has appeared also a legend. We'll start deactivating all statistics, by clicking on the None button, and then, we'll activate one by one to know them a bit more. We'll start by activating the Bloom's Taxonomy Levels menu. Now, each activity has the colors of the different taxonomy levels depending on what we configured on the activities headers. As darker the color is, more higher level on the Bloom's taxonomy, which means that a higher cognitive level is needed to do the task. Note that the time proportions are kept. For example, in the first task, we had 20 minutes of neutral task and 40 minutes of understanding, so the understanding line is longer. If we look at the second in-class activity, we'll see that the order of the tasks has kept also. Even if there are two tasks of the same level, in this case separated by an understanding task. If we want to see the global analytics per activity, we can click on the global button and suddenly, we'll see that the two separate neutral tasks are now together. The other menus work the same. We can activate the student's collaborative work button. In this case, as darker the green is, more people is involved on the task. The menu of the teacher presence. In this case, as darker the orange color is, more teacher presence. Note that here it's easy to see that teacher is present in class and not present out of class. And finally, the assessment menu. In which, as darker the red color is, more evaluated the task is. The last menu, which is the only one which has a clip icon on the top right corner, is related with the resources. If we click on it, we'll see that the resources icons on the timeline suddenly got colorful. It allows us to distinguish between the teacher resources and student resources. Last, note that we can activate more than one menu at the same time for analyzing certain design aspects. For example, if we activate the collaborative work button and the assessment one, we'll see, from the visualization, that only the group tasks and the individual tasks will be evaluated. The all-class tasks will not count for the evaluation. It's time for saving our design. For saving our design, we need to click on the Save button and the design will be saved on our account. We'll be able to access our saved designs by clicking the My Designs button of the main menu of the platform. We can also export our design in a JSON file by clicking on the Export button, which will allow us to save the design in a local file in our computer. Logically, there is also an Import button, to import edCrumble files and open designs from JSON files generated with the platform. On this menu, we also have the Help button, which opens the tutorial web page on a new window. One interesting button of the edCrumble editor menu, it's the Summary button. This provides us a summary of the design which can be printed. Let's do it. After clicking on this button, a new page will be opened with a menu with 5 options. The first option shows us a general summary of the context information about our learning design, the title, the topic, educational level, the dates, the number of students, the design description, the list of learning objectives, and the evaluation. The second option gives us a list of the activities, with all the tasks, resources, etc. The third button provides a list of the resources and hosting mediums, whereas the fourth button gives us a list of all the design analytics generated by the system. Finally, the last button shows us the interactive visualization of our learning design. Note that we are able to print each of these documents by clicking on the Printer button on the top right corner of each page. If we come back to the editor, we still have 2 buttons for discovering. If we click on the Guides Configuration button, a new pop-up window will appear. Note that we can select 2 educational models, Flipped Classroom and Problem-Based Learning. We'll activate the Flipped Classroom model and let's see what's happen. Note that, now, the tasks have a new element on the header. This element will guide us to design and apply the Flipped Classroom model. It gives us the list of the different steps of the model depending on if they have to be implemented in class or out of class. For example, the steps 1, 2, and 3 are deactivated on the in-class activities. If we hover the mouse on the steps, the system provides us a short description of each step. These are short educational guidelines which can help us designing the corresponding tasks, and with the correct order, following the educational model selected. The process for the problem-based learning guideline works the same. The last button of the editor's menu is the Sharing button. If we click on it, we'll be able to select to whom we would like to share our design, to all users in the platform, or in specific user or group of users. That's all for the creation part. Now you are ready for creating awesome learning designs with the edCrumble editor. We can come back to the main menu of the platform by clicking on the edCrumble button and see our design on the My Designs menu. The Designs page provides a summary of the design with an interactive visualization. On the top menu we have several options. Edit the design, going to the edCrumble editor. View the revision history of the design, accessing the list of different time that someone has edited the design. And we can also duplicate the design. We'll explain the Add Folder button on the videos about the Explore Designs menu. Then, we find the Sharing Options button, that it's the same Sharing button appearing also on the edCrumble editor. It allows us to share our design to all the members of the community or only sharing to a specific user or group. On the yellow menu, we can see a button at the end which allow us to publish this design page and share the generated URL with others. Let's check how it looks like on a new browser tab. Or we can even embed the page using the embedded link provided. Note that if we want to stop publishing, we can do it by clicking on the Unpublish this document button. After the visualization, on the left, it appears the general information regarding the design. And on the right, there is a space for explaining how was the experience with the implementation of the design with the students. How we can edit it. To edit it, it's necessary to edit the design and click on the Experience button on the context menu. We'll fill out this box with the corresponding information, and then, if we come back to the design page, we'll see the information published on the right box. OK. Done. Let's discover the social features of the platform. If you have shared the design, others can see this page and click on the heart button to inform you that they like the design, or even click on the star button if this design is their favorite. And also, they can leave comments below. By typing on the blank box and clicking on the Add Comment button, Explore menu allow us to browse the community's designs and find designs to reuse and adapt. Note that we can directly edit, or delete our designs, but these two options don't appear directly on the other designs. We can search for specific designs by writing on the search box. And we can also navigate through the pages of the list to find interesting designs. If we want to explore a concrete design, we can click on it and see its page. If we found that it's very interesting for us and we want to know more details about this design, we can click on the See Inside button. Note that here, in the case of our designs, it appears the Edit button. When we are inside, we have two options. First, we can just watch how it has been designed and come back to the Explore menu. And second, if we have decided to reuse and adapt this design, we can also click on the Save button, that in this case will act as a remix button. And then, a copy of this design will appear on the My Designs list, ready for being edited and used by us. Note that the system keeps the record of the reusing process and provides a tree, which is accessible through the tree button of the Designs page, that it shows the original design and their remixes done by other users. On the Explore menu, we can see that on the left side there is a list of folders with different names. If we click on a folder, we'll see that inside, there are several designs from different users. How can we group designs on a folder? If we go to My Designs menu, and we click on a design title, we'll go to the design page we already know. Remember that there is a Add Folder button on the menu below the design title. If we click on it, we'll create a folder and we'll need to introduce a name for it. Then, we'll click on the Add button. Now, we are able to select this folder from the Designs folder list of this page. We'll select our folder and we'll come back to the Explore menu. If we click on the new folder, we'll see there is our design. We'll do the same for another design of our My Designs list. We'll select it, and we'll put it on the folder. Now, we have a folder with two designs. We already learned how to group designs on a folder. Let's explore how to generate community analytics. But, one moment, why we need to have access to aggregated design analytics from several group designs. Imagine that there is a group of students which will receive two courses from different teachers at the same moment, we mean during the same semester. Imagine that these two courses are the designs we have in our folder. We can click on the Analytics button and we'll see a web page similar than the summary page of the edCrumble editor, but with only two buttons. First button shows the list of the designs in the folder. And if we click in the second button, we can see the aggregated design analytics of the designs in the folder. Coming back to the example, remember that these two designs will be implemented in parallel to the same group of students. So, it can be useful, for example, analyzing the time depending on the type of activities, in class and out of class. It can help for balancing the workload that students will have regarding the out-of-class activities. Teachers can discuss between them how much out-of-class time per design should be the maximum, per week for example, in order not to overload students. This is only one example of using these analytics. We could do the same analysis taking into account the other graphs. Aggregated design analytics allow us to take design decisions not only based on our design, but based also on others' designs which run in parallel to our group of students.